listening to Brandon Sanderfans with Ben and Sam, the only podcast where every week two best friends sit down and talk about the greatest author of our lives, Brandon
Sanderson.
H. Sanderson.
H. Sanderson.
H. Sanderson. The H stands for heck of a writer.
I've always wondered. I asked him once at a book signing, and he said, "Don't ever ask me that again." And then I walked away, and that was it.
He's like, it's real embarrassing. I changed it in college. I was trying to get a book sold. I'm sorry. So, my name is Ben, and this is my best friend, Sam. Say hi, Sam.
Hey, everybody. This is Sam. I'm Ben's best friend, and I'm also a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson, if you want to be our best friend, that's completely okay. We can have more than one best friend.
Absolutely.
But just for purposes of clarity, right now it's Sam. Just so you know, Brandon. So this is our inaugural episode of this podcast, and we're really excited to have you guys along. Normally, week by week, we're going to be going through different Brandon Sanderson books, reading chunks, and kind of summarizing and, talking about what we think, any theories we have, having fun. Sam and I are both kind of lighthearted and want to have fun with this and keep it short and sweet and kind of be a companion to all of you if you're reading Brandon Sanderson for the first time or if you're just a fan.
Yeah, and I'm not what some would call a smart person. However, I do very much enjoy Brandon Sanderson's books, and the way he writes it is just it's so well written that you don't need to be hyper intelligent in order to understand them. In high school, Ben was in calculus and other math classes, and I was in applied mathematics,
and I TA'd calculus, and I did not do anything in that calculus class. Thank you, Sam, for calling me smart.
But he
I love how you're like, I'm not a smart person. Maybe I'm not literate. Maybe I don't know what books are. It's illegal for me to own a library card.
Maybe I don't know how to use air quotes, which I did use air quotes when I said that, so that works. That was appropriate. But Brandon Sanderson, the way he writes his books, it's very, very good, and that's one thing that's very appealing to me because I'm not a huge book person, but everything Brandon Sanderson has done has been very, very, just good, just strong.
Yeah. I think that one thing that sets Brandon Sanderson apart is he really takes the enjoyment of the reader into context. So when he's writing a book, I think he's always asking himself, like, am I presenting this in a way where it's interesting enough, where I'm giving new information, where I'm, giving more information about motives or anything else?
Right, yeah.
So you'll see that a lot. But anyway, I want to start in on the history of Brandon Sanderson, kind of how he came about, and why he's our favorite. He's our favorite writer right now, and kind of go through his bibliography a little bit too. So starting off, Brandon was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, and Sam, you live in the Midwest now. What's Lincoln, Nebraska like?
Let me tell you, I currently live in Indiana, and which is very close to Nebraska, next door neighbors even. I think nobody correct me on that. This is
it's impossible to know.
They can't get a camera that can go far enough. They don't have a big enough camera to take a picture of all of the U.S. So they just kind of guess. They pick up a phone. They're like, "Hey, is this Nebraska?" And they're like, "Yeah, this is Nebraska." "Oh, cool. I think we're next door neighbors." So far, my opinion of Lincoln, Nebraska is only influenced by my opinion of my current state. So I'm going to say that Lincoln, Nebraska is a pretty cool place.
And so do they eat a lot of something in Lincoln? Like, what's the main food that they eat there?
Cigarette butts. Just a lot of cigarette butts.
Brandon Sanderson raised on cigarette butts. That's how he got to where he is now. For those of you that don't know anything about Brandon, there's a very popular story he likes to tell that he hated to read growing up when he was in middle school, though. He had an English teacher that suggested a book to him, and the book is Dragonsbane. If you haven't read it, it's basically it's almost like a realistic take on fantasy. So there are fantastical elements to it, but most of the people in the Dragonsbane world know about dragons because of what they've heard through the grapevine, mostly myths. Dragons do exist there, but they're more like lizards and not like flying beasts and stuff like that. They're not majestic; they're animals. And so it's an interesting kind of starting spot if you ever wanted to figure out kind of what he's drawing from. That was really what got him into reading. From there, he read The Wheel of Time, of course, George R. R. Martin books. He read science fiction, Orson Scott Card, Isaac Asimov. He read all of these fantasy books growing up until he decided he wanted to be a writer himself. And he did serve a mission when he was a mission for his church in South Korea. He went there and studied and taught for 2 years. And then he studied writing at BYU, where he was struggling and trying to get signed, writing all the time, taking classes, and then eventually he was able to sell a book. He's now actually adjunct faculty at BYU.
He's a whole facility building. It's just him.
Yeah, so he's adjunct faculty at BYU. He teaches a class there every year. And you can actually see that class. He posts them on YouTube to help inspire writers. That's one of his major influences. Is he wants to inspire more writers to come out and do what Hugh does.
I did not know that he put those on YouTube. I guess I didn't do enough research on Brandon H. Sanderson.
Well, I did tell you that we were going to race to see who could research more.
Well, I guess
you are losing.
We're kind of one for one, because I knew that he was raised on cigarette butts, and you knew that he puts his videos on YouTube. So far we're good. We're balancing out.
Yeah, I think that I'm more astounded that he ate cigarette butts and not like corn or some other Midwestern food.
Well, they have cigarette butt fields instead of cornfields in Nebraska. Just acres and acres and acres.
Mm-hmm. But going through it, that's basically what Brandon kind of grew up on. He's now married. He got married back in like 2006 or something. Who can tell? He got married a while ago, and he has 3 kids now, and they live in Utah, in American Fork, Utah. So that's his basic history.
Yeah.
Now, Sam, how did you first start reading Brandon Sanderson books? Where'd you get your start?
So my friends, I shouldn't say my friends, a couple of my, I shouldn't say all my friends, but a part of my friends, we started playing Dungeons and Dragons back in 2009, and it was this really fun campaign, and the DM at the time was like, Sam, you need to read this book called Mistborn, and I was a little like, I wasn't hesitant to play D&D because I was like, this is really fun, but I was hesitant to read a fantasy novel because I was just kind of like, I'm not like that into D&D, and so he let me borrow the book, and I started reading it. I read the first couple pages, I read the prologue, and I was like, I don't know if I like this, so I put it down, and then I think I came back to it about a week later, and I was like, maybe I should try reading it again. So I started reading it again, and I read through the entire thing, I think in about 4 or 5 days. I just couldn't put it down. It was so good. And then, of course, I read The Well of Ascension, and then The Hero of Ages, and then when The Way of Kings came out, our good friend Cameron gave me a copy of The Way of Kings, and I just tore through that. I was lucky, though, because The Way of Kings he gave to me in 2013, and I was so lucky because by the time I finished it, going to school, getting married, working, by the time I'd finished The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance came out, and so I was able to jump from one to the other and have that nice flow instead of having a break in the middle and just like dying to have more. I was super lucky with that. But of course I was reading Steelheart, and I was reading The Way of Kings, and I was reading Firefight, and then of course the Mistborn books and like Alloy of Law. Alloy of Law? Is that the one? That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, Alloy of Law is the one with like Old West.
Yeah. And so my calloused heart against fantasy novels was made soft by the tender words and the amazing action of Brandon Sanderson. That was a weird way of saying it, but that's how it was.
Well, amazing action is what Brandon's all about. Both of you and I have met him a couple times. I met him at a signing. You've met him at a signing. You're just telling me that you met him in an airport as well. How did that even happen?
So, yeah, I met him in an I shouldn't say it. Oh, no, I did meet him at an airport. So my wife and my baby and I we were headed to the airport. My wife's cousin was coming home from an LDS mission, and coming through the airport, And we people were outside waiting for the airport. His grandparents, his family, his cousins, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, everybody, friends, and we were waiting for. Oh shoot! I think it was her. I'm so sorry. Waiting for her. It's okay. Laura won't listen to this. So we're waiting for Laura's cousin.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Get to the point where you meet Brandon.
And we're walking, and it was like, oh, we've got tons of time. She's not coming out yet. And all of a sudden, I see Brandon Sanderson walking out of the gate. And I looked at Laura, and I was like, babe, holy crap, that's Brandon Sanderson. And she's like, well, go talk to him. And so I'm holding my 2-year-old, or I guess he was 1 at the time. I was holding my 1-year-old, and I was pushing through her family members who were like, hey, Sam. And I was like, don't talk to me. And I was pushing past him. And I had to get to Brandon. And I was moving towards him, and I reached out my hand to tap him on the shoulder. And what I should have done instead was just say, like, excuse me, Mr. Sanderson, or something very courteous. But I went to reach his shoulder, and as I was doing this, I think it was his publicist who was with him, or at least somebody who was working with him was with him. Turns around,
he grabbed your hand and he did a judo flip and he flipped you over his shoulders, but he caught your baby in midair.
Yeah,
so that he wouldn't be hurt.
He so delicately took my son out of my arms, and then broke mine. But he stops Brandon Sanderson, and he points at me. And it was this moment of, I felt a little panicked because the publicist looked a little worried. This guy with a baby was running at Brandon Sanderson. And and so Brandon Sanderson turns around and was like, hey, I am so sorry. I saw you coming out. I explained the whole thing, and I just told him that I was a big fan. And I took a quick picture with him, and he was like, hey, I'll be at Phoenix Comic-Con. Are you going? And I was like, nope. Okay, bye. But he's we talked about this a little. He's such a courteous and such a nice person that I'm sure he didn't even think twice about talking with me for 30 seconds. He was just kind of like, oh yeah, crazy guy with a baby. Hey, how's it going?
Well, and his assistant was there. Who his assistant was probably Peter. That's his assistant now, and he travels with him a lot. And Peter, Peter is like, he does know jujitsu, so he would have flipped you if you were going to do anything.
Oh, man. Yeah, we met him. Yeah, I met him at book signings. One book signing where he was very, very nice. And, well, Ben, you asked me the question. How did you discover Brandon Sanderson? How did you get into his writing?
Well, Sam, you know that. It was you.
I know.
So around the same time you were reading Mistborn, you told me that I had to read it. And I think the same friend Micah was telling me that I had to read it as well. So sometime in there, I think I got the book from Micah or from Jacob, one of our mutual friends, and started reading it. Around the same time, I was preparing to go out on LDS mission, and I couldn't finish the book before I left. And so I remember that I made you summarize the last 200 pages to me, and this was the last 200 pages of The Hero of Ages, the third book.
Yeah.
Because I'd read Mistborn, The Final Empire, The Well of Ascension, and I was about 200 pages away, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to finish it in time. I need to know what happens. And so I had you, summarize the entire thing, and then you, read me the last 20 or 40 pages, because it's absolutely incredible. We'll get there. We're going to read it, but...
Yeah, I just couldn't... I remember you asked me to do that, and I was just like, Ben, I'm not good at words. I don't know why you would ask me to summarize such great writing. And going through, there were parts... I remember, I was holding the book, and I would skim through the chapter, and I would look and I'd be like, I don't know how to explain to Ben what is happening right now. And I
Brandon used the perfect amount of words to make this thing occur.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And so I was like, if I say anything out of place, the book is ruined and we have to throw it away, and that's it. But I did my best.
And then no one can ever read it again. We'll have to throw it in a fire.
and then it'll be forgotten from memories, and no one will.
We'll have to throw it in the time stream, and it'll be erased from reality.
Oh man, I remember that. That was cool. That was fun.
But yeah, Brennan's really generous about his time. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. I want to go into his bibliography, kind of in order of appearance. I know that there was Elantris was the first book he sold that to Tor, and that one we're not going to be reading first. We're going to be reading Mistborn first, starting next week. But
yeah, well, and even I guess you could say the earliest thing that's popped up in his timeline, which it's called Defending Elysium. And it was it won a Writers of the Future contest in 2003, and this was about the same time that an editor was in contact with Brandon about Elantris, whatever you want to call it, Elantris, and
Gotcha.
he did some revisions on it, and then he resubmitted it to it was I don't know if it was competition or just like an award thing in Spain, which he won in 2008. I should have. Maybe it was 2007. Basically, he did revision. He wrote the short story called "Defending Elysium" back in, and he got an honorable mention in 2003. So that's the earliest story that he's written. But then we have in 2005 we have Elantris. Following 2000, in the following year 2006, he has Mistborn. 2007 there was The Well of Ascension, which is obviously the sequel to Mistborn. And then in 2007 as well, he releases Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, which is a young adult story novel. I haven't read it, but I know that you have. Did you read that?
I have read Alcatraz. They're lots of fun. We may get to them eventually. You'll notice something in Brandon Sanderson's bibliography, and if you're following him and up to date, he writes a lot. He writes about 3,000 words a day. He writes just a ton of material, but he can get burned out, or he can get tired of writing the same book or the same type of book over and over again. He loves epic fantasy, but to refresh himself, he'll write something completely different. So Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians is kind of like it's a young adult book, kind of Harry Potter-esque. There's Alcatraz, who's a special boy, but he's also very troubled, and it's very, very funny too. It's written from the point of view of Alcatraz, who's the little boy.
That's awesome.
So but it's completely different, from Mistborn, from Elantris, which are, your standard epic fantasy with set characters and magic systems and world building. Alcatraz is him just going crazy, doing what he wants to do, and you'll see that a lot. He normally writes, novellas, short stories, or new series when he's in between or trying to do like edits on his bigger books. Right now, he just finished Oathbringer, and he may even release a couple more short stories before the end of the year, or something before the end of the year that he is just writing while he's trying to keep fresh from rewriting and revising Oathbringer, which is the third book of the Stormlight archive.
That's really cool.
So you'll see that a lot in Brandon Sanderson's books.
So that was 2007. 2008, we have the final of the three Mistborn, or at least the first three Mistborn novels, The Hero of Ages.
And just a testament to how fast he writes. He wrote Mistborn, Final Empire, Will of Ascension, and Hero of Ages, and they were released a year after one another. That never happens in the literary world.
Absolutely
it's always
not.
a couple years down the line, or they're kind of stuck in development or process. And a lot of authors work that way. That's fine. We're just very lucky that we have Brandon that works this way and is very deliberate about how he wants to release his books and how close they are together.
Or if you have George R.R. Martin, who releases books never. So,
yeah, they're
comparatively, it's very big.
Comparatively, yeah. So we're really blessed to have Brandon Sanderson. If you're looking for someone that is on that's always going to be having something new for you,
yeah.
Brandon definitely is.
So, 2008, like I said, The Hero of Ages. Also in 2008, there was the second Alcatraz book called Alcatraz versus the Scrivener's Bones. And then in 2009, this is where we get a little crazy with B. Sanderson, as I like to call him, and he actually This is when he was helping complete Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and this was the Gathering Storm, which we might talk about a little later and more in depth. But he was contacted by Robert Jordan's wife, who chose him out of several authors to finish the series, and so this is the first book that he started completing the series for Robert Jordan. But we'll talk about that on another time.
So yeah, Robert Jordan, the writer of, that's his pen name, the writer of the Wheel of Time series, but passed away before he could finish what they thought was going to be the final book or final two books, and he left enough notes that his wife, who is also his editor, could finish the rest, or find an author that could finish the rest for him. And Brandon, having only released a couple of things in that time, she picked him out of all of these authors and decided that he would be a good one to finish her husband's work.
Yeah.
And he did. I've personally read those books, and I think they're some of his best work. They're really, really fantastic.
Yeah, and people who I looked online to see what people thought, if there was any distinguishable difference, and of course there's going to be a difference between writing styles, but they said that it melded very well together to create the ending that was supposed to happen, and that, you know, Brandon Sanderson didn't come in and be like, we're messing everything up, and I'm gonna put like magic babies in here, and we're gonna have everything from, you know, he just came in and finished Robert Jordan's work. He didn't try to make a big statement out of it.
You know, my impression at least has been that the people that were reading the Wheel of Time, I haven't heard one person that was turned off or was you know, negatively impacted by his contribution to the end of that book. If anything, they're all overwhelmingly positive, that they're happy that he was able to come on and finish it the way he did, and they love the way he was able to wrap it up and end it with, you know, Robert Jordan's work so far. So yeah, and that's really hard to do in fandoms. Like anyone, you know, in the Doctor Who fandom, and pretty much any fandom, if someone else comes in to change it, there's always going to be a lot of dissenters. Like, well, it was better when this person was doing it. With
absolutely.
anything.
Oh yeah. Back also in 2009, so he releases this first Robert Jordan novel that he's helping finish. He also releases Warbreaker in 2009, which is actually one of my favorite novels by him, because it's just such a beautiful story, very well done. And then also in 2009, he releases Alcatraz, the third Alcatraz versus the Knights of Crystallia. In 2010, he releases the first of his epic fantasy novel, The Way of Kings, which is the Stormlight Archive. And this book just blew my mind when I read it. But we'll get to it. Everyone calm down. Also, you know, talking about how much Brandon Sanderson writes, also in 2010, he released Towers of Midnight, which was the next Robert Jordan novel. And then also in 2010, he releases the fourth Alcatraz book, Alcatraz versus the Shattered Lens. Brandon Sanderson, you gotta take a breath, man. You just, and
releasing 6 books in 2 years, and 4 of those are epic fantasies. Like that doesn't happen. It's incredible how much there is for you to enjoy and like, and, you know, everyone has different tastes, and I feel like he really caters to a lot of that. It's really great.
And, you know, I redact my statement. I didn't mean that negatively, like take a breath. Of course, he's in control of everything. It's not like he's losing control and just writing nonsense. He's got it all. He's handling it. In 2011, we have the Alloy of Law, which it's a part of the Mistborn. It's part of the Mistborn world. It's years after the final events of the Hero of Ages. The magic that was created in that Brandon created for Mistborn is still in use, but it's more it's pushed forward in time to, as Ben said, more of a Western appeal to it. But we'll get there. We're gonna read it. Nobody worry.
Yeah.
And then in 2013. We have the final Robert Jordan book, which was A Memory of Light, and that was the final book to finish up, to complete the Wheel of Time series. And then also in 2013, we have The Arithmetist. 2013, that's when Steelheart was released. 2014, we have Words of Radiance, which was the sequel to The Way of Kings. 2014, we also have Legion, which was a novella that I still haven't read, and I really want to read it.
So that novella is really, really good. He wrote it on an airplane. Like, that's how... He wrote like 80% of that book on an airplane. He wrote 80% of a book on an airplane. I haven't done 80% of anything on an airplane.
Oh my gosh. So that was 2014. 2015, moving along, we have Firefight, which is the sequel to Steelheart. And then we have Shadows of Self, which is the sequel to the Alloy of Law, continuing on with the Mistborn universe. And then right the next year, we have The Bands of Mourning, which is the third in... so you have Mistborn, Well of Ascension, Hero of Ages, and then you have Alloy of Law, Shadows of Self, Bands of Mourning. That's the 3.
So those are... And he calls those eras. So, you know, Mistborn, Hero of Ages... Mistborn, Well of Ascension, Hero of Ages, that's Era 1. That's, you know, classic fantasy, and we'll get into the setting a little bit more when we start reading it next week. And then he calls Era 2, you know, the one that takes place about 150, 200 years after the events of the first book, so things have advanced a little bit. plan is then to make an Era 3 and an Era 4. Era 3 taking place in a more of a modern setting, so like with some cyber aspects and some maybe the internet's coming about to that world, and then Era 4 would be he wants to get into hard science fiction and space travel and things like that for the fourth
Nice.
era of Mistborn books. So really interesting stuff. Like it was originally going to be a trilogy of trilogies. The Era 2 kind of happened as an accident and pushed the other books back a little bit. But those are some of my favorite books. They're really really great.
So when in the universe is he gonna start introducing like really tight pants and eyeliner? Do you know? Does he talk about
It's
that?
probably going to be Era 3,
Ah,
but tight pants, I will let you know, are in the original Mistborn. We'll go
ah,
through that, but like
that's
really
right.
tight pants are just they're there. You just got to look hard.
In 2016, I mentioned Bands of Mourning, then Calamity, which is the final book. Was it the final book in the Reckoners series?
Um, Calamity, yes, it was.
Okay, yeah, that one I still haven't read. I know, I know. And then we have White Sand, Volume One, which is a graphic novel, which was also released last year. And then we have The Dark Talent and Mistborn Secret History, which obviously is a part of Mistborn. But that's the whole bibliography for Mr. Brandon Sanderson so far. We are in the beginning of 2017 now, so of course we can expect Oathbringer by the end of the year, and who knows what else. I mean, he is just
Yeah.
call him a roll. Nope, I ruined it. No, I ruined it. Call him Butter. Cause forget it. Let's move on.
Call him Butter because he's hot out of the oven.
Nailed it. Yes, that was it. That was the one. Ben, don't edit
Well,
that out. Keep that one in there.
so one last thing I wanted to touch on for kind of our introduction to Brandon Sanderson, the brief history of Brandon, is there are a lot of writing elements that he puts in place, and if you want to know more about that, he actually has his own podcast that he does with other writers as well, Dan Wells and others, where they talk about their writing philosophies and how to write the way that they do. It's called Writing Excuses, and it's completely free. You can listen to it anytime. But something that he's released in kind of his contribution in a wide sense to people is the laws of magic. Now, he has very specific laws that he follows whenever he uses or creates magic in one of his worlds. Since they are fantasy books, a lot of them involve magic, and they inform the story, they inform the setting, religion, currency, everything like that. So he has three laws of magic and a fourth one that's kind of not an official law, but everyone knows about. So the first one, and I'll read it, and then Sam, I'll see if you want to explain it to us. The first one is an author's ability to solve conflict satisfactorily with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. So what does that mean?
Oh, there were just some big words, and
Brandon uses those every once in a while.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I actually had his website up with the explanation, so I could just be like, "Let me saunter through here."
Well,
But
let me explain it because yeah, there are some big words in that. Basically,
yeah,
if the reader doesn't know that a magic can do something, the magic can't fix a problem with that. So let's say you have a magic where a person could become incredibly strong. If the reader doesn't know that that exists, then he can't use it yet. To fix any problems. He can't just have a person throw a building and have it be kind of a mystery. He wants to be able to explain that to you first so you know all of the guns that are on the table so that when he uses it, it doesn't feel cheap. There is like soft magic and hard magic. Hard magic is where you do explain it and you know exactly what's going on. Soft magic is like Gandalf, you kind of know that he's magic and that he has some spells going on, and you'll see some soft magic in Harry Potter too. But then, yeah, so that's kind of what that means. It means that we're not going to present something that you don't know about as a reader first. He wants to explain it before, so that when it happens, you know how incredible it is.
well, and something else he does along with that is if somebody does use a magic or a power, and you don't know about it yet, it's more of a you're gonna learn about it. He's never gonna leave you high and dry. He's never gonna be
Exactly.
like, and then this guy does this thing. How does he do it? what am I, a writer? But no, he just he gets to it. Everyone, he'll get to it. So that's the first law.
Exactly. The second law is limitations are greater than power, which
Yes.
basically means, if you're setting up a magic system, you want to make sure that not only people can understand what it can do, people can understand what it cannot do, what they're limited from being able to do.
Yeah, and in this one, reading it on his website, he gives the example of Superman, because Superman is iconic. Everyone knows Superman, but everyone also knows that Superman is weak to kryptonite. And I think he mentioned it. If he didn't mention it, he's also weak in the sense a limitation is Lois Lane. How she is a weakness to him only because he will put her in front of other things willingly or consciously or subconsciously. He will put her. And it's interesting to watch that, to see that this I shouldn't say all powerful, but this superhuman being, this alien being who has all these powers and abilities, can be stopped by a little green rock and by a pretty lady.
Yeah, that's why you'll see a lot in, even in Superman stories. The big conflict is not how he can, beat up this enemy to the point where they can't move or threaten him anymore. It's defending the people that entity is trying to threaten in such a way so that he can finally subdue them. So yeah, the code of ethics that he got from his parents as well is one of his limitations. He can't put that aside and say, well, it's fine if these people, don't have lives anymore. No, he would never do that. He was always going to be there as a shield around the earth. So that's law number 2. And law number 3 is expand on what you already have before adding something new. Basically means if there's something that your magic system can kind of do, get creative. Figure out a way where it can absolutely do that, or where someone can work around and get creative with how they're going to do that. In a lot of fantasy books, people that know about magic or know about, a secret system or something like that, or have a certain skill, they'll all seem to use it in the exact same way. What Brandon Sanderson does a lot is he will take characters in that world and he'll have them utilize their powers in different ways, in different avenues. Maybe they're not as strong as someone else, so they have to think faster or go about something in a completely different way, and that just kind of deepens the pool rather than just widening it.
Yeah, and it's always best to do that, because you add too much stuff in, it becomes convoluted and it becomes less interesting. And with I don't know if he necessarily put a limit on himself. I guess you could look at it that way. In Mistborn, there are certain amounts of metals and certain things that they do, and he talks about those metals, and that's it. He's not like, there's these metals, but then there's 64 other metals that maybe we'll talk about. I don't know, but here's what they might do or might not do. He keeps it nice and oh man, I'm so good with words. This is why I am definitely a writer. He keeps it nice and strict. He keeps what he does in a box, in a confined space, so that he can talk about that and expand on that.
Exactly, and even in Mistborn, we're going to see the magic system and the abilities that people have inform the world that they live in. So certain things that they say, sayings, the way they build buildings, the way they use their money and transact on things, the equipment that they carry around with them is all based on, they live in a world where this type of magic happens and they want to prepare or be aware of it. Like he said, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. If you were able to fly, and 1/3 of the population could fly, it's going to change our lives completely, and you want to be able to reflect that in the world.
So the 3 laws, it's always, I mean, you think about Isaac Asimov and his 3 laws of robotics. Wait, was that him? Yeah, that was him.
That a robot can't hurt a human. The robot, those things.
It's so smart for a writer to do that, so that he can abide by those rules and be able to create a good fiction rather than loosey-goosey, let's just see what happens when I pull whatever out of this hat. And so the magic systems he creates are absolutely brilliant. And we're getting to a part, we're running a little longer than we anticipated, but that's fine. I mean, it's our first one.
Well, before we get there, Sam, I just want to say the unofficial 4th law of the laws of magic for Brandon Sanderson. The 4th law is, when in doubt, err on the side of awesome. So maybe he doesn't always follow these things, but it's only because he wants to do something absolutely incredible and awesome. Because, he's all about servicing the fans. Well, not servicing the fans, servicing the reader, making sure that you're enjoying the story that he's putting down as much as he's enjoying writing it. Because you really feel that he enjoys and loves writing when he's putting these stories together.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sam was saying we have a little special something each week. We want to give a little something back to the community, to Brandon, and so this is a little bit we're gonna call Making Magic. Now, Brandon Sanderson, all of your fantasy stories have different magic systems in them, and they're based off of different things. What Sam and I are going to try to do is we're going to make a magic system for you. So I just got here a random noun generator. I'm going to generate a random noun, and Sam and I are going to create a magic system based around that noun, completely free of charge. You're a busy man. Use this if you need it.
Yeah, and if you do use it, just send us a tweet and just be like, hey, that was a good one.
Hey bros, good job. Thanks.
7 out of
Okay,
10.
so the noun here, the random noun is spread. So Sam, what does spread magic look like?
So it would be so spread magic would be a variety of cheeses and other other things that you could put on bread, but you'd spread it on a wall in a certain. Oh, I think I'm approaching arithmetist territory, but you spread it on a wall a certain symbol, it does a certain thing. So let's say you want to get inside this building, but all you have is some cream cheese and some jelly. Well, you put that in a nice little keyhole shape, jelly on the outside, cream cheese in the middle. That door is just going to appear, and you walk right through it. That's spread. Yeah. That's my spread magic.
Maybe it's also about we have the cheeses and stuff. That's part of the magic. That's part of the world. Everyone transacts in cheese. We have the dairy hegemony or whatever. So they're taking over everything. Maybe it's also about maybe people have to learn to be contortionists and see how far you can spread your body eagle without touching the floor. That gives you more potential energy. So let's say you do that for 4 hours in the morning. Maybe later you can run 3 miles in a second. Who knows?
Whoa.
Who knows what you can do with all of that potential energy, that you did from spreading earlier. Maybe this is yoga magic. You're spreading your muscles apart and receiving the world's energy into your body. This is not a great noun.
Oh man. Well, that was good. So it's a spread magic : cheese and yoga time. That's what the magic system will be called. So,
and the book would maybe be called Spread: Rise of the Dairy Hegemony. I don't know, something like that. whatever you need.
Spread: Rise of the Dairy Hegemony : that's some nice cheese you got there. It's a terrible title. Brandon Sanderson's the writer, not us.
Yeah, and it's in the self-help area because it's also about yoga a lot. But it's called Spread: How to Accept the World's Magic into Your Body.
Oh man, that was good. So Brandon Sanderson, if you want it, take it. That's all yours.
If you want it, take it. That's all yours, bud.
All yours, bud.
So if anyone out there is still on the fence about reading Brandon Sanderson, don't do that. Just jump in, read a book, do your part, and add to your brain. Like I said, Sam and I, starting next week, we're going to start reading Mistborn and the Final Empire, the first book in the Mistborn series. And we're really excited to share this with you. Anything you want to say, Sam, before we head out?
Nope.
All right, wonderful. Well, for Sam and I,
go out and read a Brandon Sanderson book. Ben said it best. That was great.
Read a book. There we go. So for Sam and I, we're signing off for Brandon Sanderfans. Read a book.